Freelancers, small business owners, consultants, and solopreneurs. Some people are just drawn to working for themselves. I'm Owen Roth. In this show, I have conversations with self-employed folks about their career journeys. Welcome to the Bossless Path podcast. And here we go. Today I'm joined by Jake Nielsen, VP of Sales at Lint in Corvallis, Oregon. Hey, Jake. How's it going?
Good. How are you, Owen?
Good. So you tell us a little bit about what you do.
I have a small vintage clothing store in town. So we've had it open for about a year and a half. We're coming up on 2 years, I think, in a few months. So yeah, pretty much. I don't know. Time flies. But a little vintage store, kind of downtown Corvallis. We were doing e-commerce before that, and we pretty much just move clothes. And we do a little bit of online on the side. But yeah.
You say we. There's you and...
Oh, yeah. I run it. So I run it with my buddy Charlie. I moved to Corvallis after my undergraduate degree down in Eugene. And it was still kind of like COVID era. And Charlie was running like an e-commerce kind of shop. And it was doing really well because it was like COVID era.
Yeah.
And so then we started the physical storefront kind of coming out of COVID. There's still like kind of affordable pockets around town in Corvallis and other like small towns in Oregon. And there's like a pretty consistent student population. So we were like, we might as well open a physical storefront.
Yeah. Affordable in terms of like renting.
Yeah.
Space,
like renting, like lease type, like it's pretty unique. It's like you go up to Portland and it's all triple net leases, and you can kind of like, once you're established up there and you know like the network of landlords or the people that you're working with, you can kind of get into like little office spaces or weird little like ADUs behind houses that can run like e-commerce things. But
yeah,
down here it's still kind of, you walk by a storefront and there's like a phone number on it and it's just some guy who's your landlord and your maintenance guy, and and they show up with like a bucket and a hammer when something breaks. It's kind of old school. It's fun.
It is, yeah. Unfortunately, there's a lot of those signs like in Corvallis now. Like I feel like every month I'm like downtown. I'm just like, oh, that store is open.
It's getting more and more expensive here. I think there's kind of a push from what I've heard, because there are a few really good landlords in town.
I was just gonna ask you like how you found your place then.
I think it had popped up on Facebook Marketplace. Our landlord lives in like this Victorian house behind us, and we have this little brick building that's like on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And it's freestanding, which is what I liked about it.
Mm-hmm.
And our landlords, or both of our landlords, one of them had like a jewelry shop in the store, and she was moving. It's Terra Viva, like jewelry and art. They're right by like the book bin now. There's like a little kind of side office.
Yeah. I've seen it.
Yeah. She was moving and downsizing. She wanted a smaller space. And our shop is about 400 square feet, so it's not huge.
Mm-hmm.
But it was available. It was a freestanding building. It was relatively affordable. It was kind of downtown, but also close to campus. It was like kind of in that middle ground. Like the hardest part about it is there's nothing near it other than like University Hero, because we're right next to like City Hall, and there's not a lot of foot traffic. But
southwest corner of downtown.
It's such a weird town. It's such a small little like core downtown. There's like that little T where Monroe and Second meet, where that Saturday market happens.
Yeah,
and people spill out by like 2.5, 3 blocks, but they don't go beyond there. You know what I mean? It's super strange.
Yeah.
I need to like paint something on the side of the building, so just like close or something. To like stop in.
Get some equivalent of a bat signal. Throw it up.
We get one of those little inflatable guys that like flails his arms.
Oh yeah.
Our dealership thing. Yeah.
Just slap one of your shirts on him.
That was
extra large shirt on it.
I would like that. We probably have one that would fit him in the garage, I think. Yeah. No, that would be good.
Yeah.
I'm writing that down.
Do you still do e-commerce as well?
Yeah, sparingly. So when we were living in our old place, we had like a Depop account, which is like online clothing, kind of social media, Instagram-y sort of. Like you can like things and follow people.
Mm-hmm.
And Charlie had built it up a bit to where he had like 3,000 followers, 4,000 followers on it, and you can get verified. So they put your stuff in a more favorable position in their algorithm if you're verified.
Okay.
But it requires maintenance and everything.
Sure.
So I was talking with him, and I got done with an English degree down at UO, and I was like, well, it's just an English degree. I don't have like any kind of certs. It was like I could go into some like PhD program. I could go and take my LSAT. I could go to like grad school for teaching. Like you can do stuff with it, but the stuff that you do with an English degree is you go back to school.
Yeah, it's a stepping stone.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. It was the middle of COVID. It was kind of, some of the classes I took felt like they were a little bit undertaught, which is justified because of what was going on. But I was like, I don't want just like an easy grade handed to me. So I figured I'd take a couple of years off and then look at grad school later. And then I was talking with Charlie because I knew him. We'd been hanging out and like going and picking clothes together. And I was like, well, I could help you with the Depop thing if I could put my stuff on there. And we could just keep like a spreadsheet of stuff of mine that sells and then stuff that you sell, and I could take a payout at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Because in that way, you're still splitting labor. It's still like if I had moved to town and I had done nothing, I wouldn't have made any money. There was still some like responsibility. And the thing, when you're on that kind of algorithm system on like a selling app like that, the more you feed it, the happier it gets.
Yeah.
It takes metrics the whole time.
Yeah.
But so me coming on and helping out boosted the metrics of the selling site.
Oh, because you're feeding it more.
It like helped to feed it more. And so that's kind of how it made sense.
And you came here because you were starting to work with Charlie, sort of, but you guys were just doing e-commerce at the time.
Yeah. So Charlie was living down here with his partner, and they were finishing up an undergrad degree. So he was stuck down here, essentially. And I was like looking at places to rent and places I might live and everything. And I was like, okay, this is kind of guaranteed work, and it gave me a platform to like sell stuff on. And he's my friend. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm living with a buddy. I can sell stuff. And I had a part-time job up in Oregon City too. So I would go up to Oregon City and work in a store 2 to 3 days a week. And that check, I think they were paying me like 12 or 13 an hour. So just like straight minimum wage, you know? But I would find stuff for the store and sell that to the store, like toys and like old like vintage posters and things like that. And so any of that, I would have a box, and at the end of the week from picking around during the week, it would be filled up, and I would take it up there, and that would pay for my gas. And then the check from the shop would pay for my rent. And then anything that I sold online with the e-commerce thing was just like spending money, savings, things like that.
Yeah. And you said picking around earlier. What does that mean?
Like we go out, you know, depending on the time of the year, anywhere from like now in the winter, it's really slow, but we're used commerce. So the goal or like the trick with it is I can't just, you know, have a wholesaler that I punch a number into. I want 10 red shirts. I want 20 blue shirts. I want this style. I want this in medium, you know, everything that we sell, we might get another one of, but we might not. It's all sort of like just up to, you know, whether you can find it or not. So we go around the state looking for stuff. You know, I mean,
like thrift stores, estate sales,
anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah. I have no work-life separation. You know what I mean? Like if I am like going down the road and I'm like with family and there's a dumpster and it looks good, I'll be like, pull over. Like, and it's just, and like, and I mean, like my parents have a background in this kind of stuff too, sort of. So they're like kind of into it. Like if I'm up for like a family thing, they're like, this house is getting cleaned out around the corner. And like, I'll go, and then they'll be like, oh, like I wanted that, or, you know, so it's cool. Yeah.
It's like foraging for like, when you say picking, it's very much like
it's literally picking. Yeah. You like wait until you see it in front of you and then you grab it and you buy it, or, you know, and then we also have friends who are dealers around the state. So a lot of what we buy for the store is like kind of wholesale from them, and they're up in the Portland area. There's more up there.
So that's like their thing, is they're pickers. So they're sourcing. And then they're kind of a middle person.
Yeah. They're not interested in maintaining like a storefront or something like that, which makes sense because it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so we can kind of sell stuff for a little bit higher because we have a physical space, and they are happy to get rid of it because they don't want to stack it up in the bedroom that they have, you know, if they're like renting a place with roommates.
Yeah.
So it works out. You know, there are a few people around the state that we do our best to support pretty well, you know, and it's cool. Yeah.
I don't think I really noticed this boutique. I mean, boutique fashion is that how, like, the right label? Yeah,
you could call it that. I mean, I think the level that we're doing it, we're like kind of like a glorified thrift store. I feel like, you know, like I think the late 20 teens, early 2020s, which is weird to say out loud. But like that, these past like 5 years has sort of been like the decline of like the thrift store, where like you could go in back in, 2012 to 2017, like when I was like middle school, high school, you could go in and get cool old stuff, and it might be marked up a little bit, but it's not like the worst. Like there was a thrift store that I would go to up in the Portland area, and it used to be that any shirt without a tag on it was just like 99 cents.
Mm.
And now they have people in the back pulling stuff for eBay. Any like vintage Blazer shirt is like $59.99.
Wow.
It has like a security tag on it.
Wow.
And so it's changed a lot. But we have friends who were really into going to the thrift stores around in Corvallis, and those suck. They're really like crowded, and they never put anything out. They put things out slow. And some of our friends who were really into that, who just like old clothing, they just come to us now because our price point's pretty much at where Goodwill is now. And if you come into the store, we have 8 racks, and it's all kind of neat stuff.
It's very curated.
Yeah, you look through a Goodwill for like 2 hours, and you're gonna see like 3 things that are kind of cool, or you might not see anything depending on who's in there. So
Sure.
yeah.
I never noticed like these type of what you guys have at Lint. I didn't notice those stores until probably like 2-3 years ago. And then all of a sudden I blinked and was like, there's multiple of these in Corvallis. It kind of felt like a wave that came from nowhere.
It's kind of crazy. Yeah, there was one called Sweet Zero, and those are our buds. They have a store up in Portland now.
Yeah.
And then they left, and then there were kind of a few people around selling some stuff. And then we were like, we might as well like have like a physical location. So we opened it, and yeah, it's totally like popped up.
Yeah.
It's people are really interested in like sustainable fashion now, and it's a little bit of a like kind of teeter-tottery thing, because like with that comes a lot of like weird greenwashing. I mean, I don't know how. I think my store is probably more sustainable than if I had like the Shein storefront or something, but it's not that. There's not a lot of ethical consumption in the United States, whether you like it or not. I think people take comfort in it, and people are interested in used clothing and used fashion more than they have been in the past. But, I don't know if it's necessarily more like eco-friendly in the long run. I mean, I guess it is. We're saving stuff from the trash eventually.
It's a second life, yeah.
Yeah.
I think like what actually is like, well, I guess I'd have to think about this deeper to really know if it's true. But on the surface, what I'm thinking right now is that it's actually the fashion trend that has helped develop like the longevity of items. I know I haven't shopped at your shop, but I know the type of stuff you guys sell. Like some of that stuff to someone of my parents' generation, or
they come in, they're like,
they'd be like, this is a shredded shirt with stains. This is trash. Like, why is anyone wanting to wear this, let alone pay whatever, $20-$30 for it?
Yeah.
So I think the fashion trend of wearing like older clothes that's well worn, that's like more environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
Sustainable.
Wear it till it falls off. All my clothes have holes in them. I don't, and that's probably more reflective of me than my environmental ethos. But like, yeah. But yeah, just wear your pants until they're holding the knee and they're fraying down here. And like, this is a relatively good pair. These were like my teaching pants, but I kind of wore them out. But yeah. Yeah.
It's high fashion for you.
I guess, yeah. Business casual.
Yeah, business casual. Yeah.
Yeah, it's much more popular right now. I don't know how long it's going to last. I'm interested to see.
Yeah.
I mean, I have other it's not like all in
right,
with the store. It's really fun, and like we make decent money. We make like livable money doing it. You know what I mean? Livable money for being 25.
Yeah.
So it's not like amazing, but it's, I get to do what I want, and it's, you have your own space that you like decorate. People come in and they like it,
Yeah. Let's get into the diversity of like the stuff you've done and do.
Oh, yeah.
You kind of talked a little bit about your history of how you got into Lint and all that, but maybe take us from the beginning and hit all the steps.
Okay, so I was born in like the Oregon City area, and we don't
have to go back that far.
Well, at the time, my parents had an antique shop, and so that's sort of like the start of like, when I was really little, like 3 to 10, it would be like, go to the Goodwill outlet, go to all the auction houses, go to all the antique stores. My dad had a spot up in like the Hollywood district at an antique mall after they had closed their store. Their store was in Oregon City for like a couple years.
Okay.
And then they had me and they're like, oh, like we need to get like actual jobs, but
the reality show.
yeah, a little bit of financial burden popping up. But yeah, no, I would run around with them as a kid and go to all these kind of things. So I was reared up on going to estate sales and going to, all my toys growing up as a kid were like from me getting a 50-cent allowance and like lowballing people at garage sales. I'd have like a tub of Legos. I'd be like, would you take 13 cents? And, halfway cute kids. So they'd take it, But yeah, so that was the start of it. And through that, I got linked up in like middle school, early high school with this shop in Oregon City that is called Coin Corner. It's like a 3-generation family business.
Okay.
It's probably a 10, 15,000 square foot storefront, and it's all used stuff. So I got linked up with this shop, and I started selling them when I was like 5 to 10 years old. I started selling them like stuff that I would find going to garage sales with my family. I grew up in West Lynn. It's a pretty affluent area. My parents had one house there. They sold it in 2008 when like the market kind of tanked. And they sold it right before the market tanked, and then they were pretty like liquid, I think. And once that dipped down, they bought another house that was closer by and redid it all. Like I remember being like in like second grade and helping like knock out the deck and like scraping paint off of it and stuff.
Yeah.
So they redid it, and like my family's been really good about like both my parents teach. They make really pretty solid money for like a 9-month contract. They're like late in their careers, but they do pretty well, but not like crazy new money driving like a stupid Escalade or something. It's not like that. So we have a house there, and it's like you drive 2 miles and suddenly you're in like a really affluent area. And we would go to garage sales there, and they would buy stuff for like their house, like appliances or like furniture when they were furnishing it.
Sure.
And I'd go with them, and I would like buy toys and stuff because I was like, first through fourth, fifth grade. I was really into like Legos and stuff.
Oh, I love Legos.
I know Legos, Pez, and then like 80s toys I started getting into then. My dad had like a He-Man like VHS DVD maybe. It was right on the cusp of it, but we would watch that. And I had like Castle Grayskull that he had found at a garage sale. So I started picking all these up, and I would take them to this toy store where they would pay me money. And that I never took an allowance when I was a kid. I was just like moving toys around and like trying to get my like $5 to $20 so I could go and fund the hobby and like go to Target and buy a $10 Lego set.
Yeah.
So that's where it started. And eventually in high school, my parents were like, you need to get a job. And I was like, I don't really want to, And I had been like kind of teaching trumpet lessons to kids and things on the side, and still like flipping things every now and then, or just like grabbing stuff and taking it to that shop, and that would be like gas money, or that would be like money to go like try to keep up with my friends who were getting like $50 a week from their parents or whatever.
Right.
So I went into the shop and I was like, can you guys hire me? Like, I don't want to go work at McDonald's and flip burgers. Because that was my expertise at the point. It was like I could work at the toy store, or I could go and just like hear the little like order ringing at McDonald's for 8 hours and like hate it. And they were like, yeah, cool. And they gave me like a day a week. So I'd work a day or two a week there. And that was like the start of like, they sort of over the years, I worked on and off through college and late high school at that toy store. Okay. And they kind of started showing me like the background of things. They run a really big e-commerce account. They probably have like 3,000 items at any given moment on eBay.
Oh, wow.
So like huge, like giant shelves with racks and racks of itemized stuff. You'd spend 15 minutes finding something if it got lost in the mix. It was like that kind of a thing. It's a big
sizable.
Operation. Yeah, with like a storefront that's also massive. So that was like good job upbringing, used store stuff. My parents had like a used merchandise store at some point.
Yeah, the foundation's pretty apparent.
Yeah, I was kind of getting the itch through like undergrad. I was doing flea markets and stuff and selling, and I mean like you would do one of those and sometimes you make like $1,000 in a day and you're like, whoa, sweet, And I mean like that's all you have for like a month and a half, and you're like a broke college kid, but it's still like it's cool. You don't have to have like a part-time job. You just like concentrate your labor. And they're really long days, but you just concentrate it and you get enough money to kind of float.
Probably more interesting than just, clocking into flip burgers.
Yeah.
As well.
I've never had like a real like kind of proper job. I've had a lot of stuff that's paid really well or that's like really been cool and informative and interesting to do. And I mean, during COVID was the craziest too. So I got a job with a guy who owns like 15 to 25 rental homes, and he was having me like go in. Most of the work I did that summer was on like a one-level ranch. And he actually made a lot of his money selling clothing big back in the day. There was a big wave in the 90s, and he was selling stuff to Japan on like Yahoo auctions and wholesaling in person and stuff. And then he was buying houses and rolling them into kind of like landlordy sort of stuff. But he had this fixer-upper he bought, and he knew me through the clothing and my family. And so I was just like his handyman guy. So on this one house, I tore all the carpet out of it and then like cleaned it, painted the interior, painted the exterior, scraped all the shingles off the roof. I don't think I did the flooring, did the yard. But basically like this house, he bought it for like $250,000, and I think I was getting 15 an hour, which is good for me. I was like, whatever. Like it's COVID. It was like weird, like mid-COVID too, where they're like changing it every day. They're like, oh yeah, you know, like it's in the air, it's in the toilet. Like you're just like, I don't know where it is, but I don't want to be around people, you know. Yeah. So I just got to go like stand on a roof and be alone, and you know, I was in pretty good shape because it's all manual labor, and I got my like bundle of money at the end of the week and could like buy beer, buy food. It was pretty nice. Yeah. But yeah, he taught me a lot too. And then by then it was just I moved down here, finished my degree, and did the e-commerce thing. And I was still maintaining that job in Oregon City at that toy store. Oh, really? It was probably like the longest job I had. It was super, super part-time. But whenever I'd move back into town, they would give me more hours, and they would let me like work there for a little bit. Okay. And I would do some of the buying. I would price things. Shop organization. I would dress the windows, just kind of like that sort of things in that vein. And it was used stuff. So it's been like a long background of like used things.
Wow. Using the title picking, like you said, it's like you've picked up like all these skills and experiences.
Yeah. Met a lot of cool people. It's been fun to like meet some of the people I've met. Yeah.
Did you meet Charlie in school? That's how you said you met him?
I met Charlie at a flea market in Corvallis. There was this flea market that they did, and I was in a booth across from his with a buddy of mine from Portland who does clothing. A buddy of mine up in Portland sells consignment at a couple like kind of malls up in the area. And at the time we were going around Portland a lot. I was living up there, and then I was going down in Eugene a lot too. I was split time Portland, Eugene, kind of hopping back and forth. And I would just fold stuff in my closet of like my college apartment, and I would wait until we had a flea market, and then I would go and sell like half of it and then like replenish it or like wholesale it to like a Japanese buddy who came to town. And there was one in Corvallis that was really good that was run by my friends called, what's it called? It was like Loose Ends, I think is what they called it. But it was like a different kind of vendor market where you just set up your stuff and they took care of the sales portion. And they took a percentage of your sales, which was nice because I just set up my racks and I goofed around with my friends all day. And that's how I met Charlie. He was there, and then he was like, wait, you live in Eugene, we should like hang out. I was like, okay, yeah, that's cool. And I would come up here, and then we would go to like either like the coast, or we would go up into like the Portland area. But they were early days. I would leave Eugene like 3:30 in the morning, get up here like 4:30 because it takes 4:30, 5 o'clock. I would get up at 3:30, and whether or not I left before 4 was sort of up in the air depending on how I felt.
Either way, that sounds early.
No. You do this, you get up early, you know.
This is to go picking?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then you make a full day of it. It's a 10, 12-hour day if you do it right, you know. Wow.
That's that sounds like a lot of work.
It's a lot of long hours. Yeah. I like it. Yeah. I don't really like being idle. I just don't like sitting still or waking up and having like nothing to do, you know? Like earlier in the day, I followed a guy out. I helped a guy pull a filing cabinet out of a basement, but it was like a 200-pound filing cabinet. It was like this monster. And so I helped him do that. And because I did that, I followed him out to his house by Crescent Valley. And he has this huge collection of like 80s G.I. Joes. And he like wants to get rid of them, so I'm gonna go through those. But it was just because I've been like idle with the shop, and like I've been doing stuff, but like I haven't had a lot to fill up my day. So I just needed something to fill up my day. It's like what I would sell at the old store. So I'll go through it, and but yeah, Yeah, this is like the industry of the 10 to 12 hour day. And it's like, if you're going to do it, get used to that. Like, I remember the first couple, like, 12s I worked. And I had a couple other part-time gigs. I've picked up a couple, like, off and on, like, bartending things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a terrible bartender. If you walk into a bar and you see me behind the bar, leave. Because unless you want a beer, I can pour a beer, you know?
Anything that does involve more than just
Yeah,
moving a tap and
you
do
know,
that, but then
I can mix drinks, but I'm slow. You know what I mean? And then I get flustered, and I'm not. You know, like, you're better off going to a bar that I'm not working in. You know, like, but yeah, I had a couple of those gigs, and they were really good. But yeah, that was like the era of like the 12 to 15 hour day. It was got a little gnarly for a while. Good money, but it was like at what cost? You know?
Sure. Yeah. If we're in the present day, talking about the present day, you're running the shop with Charlie, Lint, doing a little e-commerce. It sounds like, but it sounds like the ratio is my majority is through the brick and mortar versus the e-commerce side.
Yeah. So I think, you know, when you're selling like used stuff, it's just a numbers game.
Yeah.
How much can you buy? How much of that can you sell? You know what I mean? So I think a lot of what we're doing right now is through the store.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just really affordable, kind of accessible stuff going through the store. And we have nicer stuff too. And that's kind of saved for like Japanese buyers or like maybe a flea market up in Portland, or like we wholesale to a couple shops in like the Oregon area who do more like kind of true vintage collectible stuff. It's just not like the right audience. If I put out like a jacket that's from World War II and really collectible, and even if I put it out for a really fair price, that price would be so high that like college students would walk in, they'd be like, "What? This sucks." Like, so it's just the balance of keeping your demographic happy and also like doing stuff that's also like that you enjoy. When you have like a used clothing store, or when you have like anything that's like used, or you're collecting like vintage stuff, like taste is a really degenerative thing. To where like you start and you're like, I love t-shirts, and then you're like 3 years in and you're like researching like buttons on some like jacket from the teens, and like I have a whole account that I follow that my friend who owns a shop up in Portland, a really successful shop that's been like featured in like GQ and has sold stuff to like celebrities and things, you know, like that kind of a like curated sort of thing.
Yeah.
But like I have a account that I follow with him and message him back and forth, and it's all just zippers from like the 20s and 30s. It's psychotic. Like I can't talk about it with like it's not what you want. You know what I mean? It sounds so weird to say out loud.
Yeah.
But like that's sort of what you're in for. Like you keep learning about things, and eventually it gets so narrow that you're learning about like ridiculous stuff.
Yeah.
But it's cool. It's cool stuff. Yeah.
Sounds like the commerce equivalent of like getting a PhD, where people like in, you know, higher education, they just like get like so narrow with what they're focusing on, and then they just live in this little sliver of like information and focus that they focus on.
Yeah.
But for you, it's like or commerce can be that where you focus in.
Yeah, I mean, you follow like your interests, and you kind of focus in on that too. And there's a lot of like history mixed in too. We do a lot of militaria outside of the shop. And a lot of that's really unique stuff, and you need to learn like your patches. You need to learn like ranks, insignias, what regiment was stationed where, you know. You get something that like a military piece that's named, and, you know, it's more collectible because it's named. It has like provenance attached to it. So you'll go home and you'll research like databases, old forums, like internet forums, just all sorts of things. You know, that's like the fun part for me. And at that point, it feels like, I mean, like people who do this call themselves like dealers, you know? And I mean, it's so easy, not easy, but like you don't need a PhD to fill a shop full of clothing racks and put out cool clothes. You know what I mean? But like the people who are like really like high functioning in like this realm basically have like a doctorate's worth of information. They just didn't pay for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, some of the people in like antiques and things like that are like the most academic people I've ever met. And they have like amazing memories. But it's just like a non-traditional way of engaging with things academically.
Yeah, it's super interesting.
It's cool, yeah. It's a little bit of a dance, because I got really burned out on the whole like academia thing. A lot of the profs I had wanted me to go into that, and I was like, no, it's not going to happen.
two things you mentioned that
Yeah.
I'm curious about. One of them you mentioned a couple times, Japanese buyers.
Yeah.
What's that about?
There's a huge sorry, I'm stretching my leg if that's cool.
Yeah.
There's a huge like domestic market in Japan for American clothing. And it's been that way since the early to mid 90s. And it's changed a lot since then, but there's always been a market because it's difficult to get it over there.
Hmm.
And there are these guys that come over, and meeting them is really difficult. That's the hardest part, is like meeting them. Sometimes you meet them in a thrift store. Sometimes they cold call you. Sometimes they come into the store. It's the benefit of having a brick and mortar store.
Okay.
It says like vintage on it. You know?
So when you say meeting, you mean just generally get connected with them and figure out who they are.
Yeah,
vice
and
versa.
what they want and everything. Yeah. It's fun. It's really fun to meet them. We probably have like 4 or 5 guys at this point, and they're all buying different stuff. You know, like you might get one who just wants like Eddie Bauer. He's just like the Eddie Bauer guy. Or you might get one who wants like amazing like old military and Levi's, and he pays a lot, maybe not, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because like right now the yen's really bad. And so like that's sort of like the uphill battle with the Japanese guys right now, is the dollar's strong and the yen's not.
Yeah.
The dollar's not strong, but it's stronger than the yen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like pricing for them is really difficult, and keeping them happy for us is really difficult, because we have guys who have spent a ton of money with us, but they're having trouble keeping up with like the American market, because there's a market for stuff that they've been buying that wasn't popular over here, and suddenly in the past 2 years it's popular now. But yeah, I think one of our guys is coming in like a week. Okay. So we've got a big stack of like down jackets and things set aside for him.
These are relationships with some of these guys, the Japanese buyers you've established, and they'll give you a heads up, like that guy you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm going to be here in whenever, March, April, something. And then they come and here's what we have for you.
Yeah.
Because they can't really place an order without seeing it.
Yeah, I try to kind of like suss out what they like.
Yeah.
And then if I get something that I think they would like, if they're one of the good ones that we have a few guys who come in every now and then, and they're really picky or they're unpredictable. Mm-hmm. And at that point I just like open the storage unit door and I'm like, go nuts, like go for it. But with a few of our more like specific guys, like this guy who's coming really likes like hunting stuff, and he really likes military stuff, and he really likes denim, and he's super particular about condition. So maybe like 1 out of every 300 to 500 things that I find and use for the store or for e-commerce or for some shop-related thing is something that would like suit him, you know? So the pile really just slowly, you know, and you may have like, you may get into like a good spot or like a good dumpster, or like, you know, meet someone who comes in the store who wants you to go to their house, and you might get 20 things that he would like in one day.
Yeah.
But in between chasing those instances where you get a lot of something that one of those guys will want, it just slowly kind of trickles in.
Yeah.
It's just a numbers game.
Sure. These guys, they're not just coming to Corvallis. They're just making a U.S. trip, and then they're like up and down the West Coast or something like that, or they're making a lot of stops.
We get the West Coast circuit guys. So most of those guys they'll fly to Seattle, and they'll drive down, and they'll hit it. So they hit Rose Bowl Flea Market down in, where's that? Anaheim, I think. Rose Bowl's down in Anaheim. And then they go through like Southern California down to San Diego, and then they come back up through Oregon into Seattle. Wow. Some of those guys will also kick into Idaho. There are a few people doing like really amazing clothing things out in Idaho, and they'll go to them, or Montana. Mm-hmm. There's more like workwear, western wear, ranch wear out there. People out there kept their stuff more than like out here in the burbs. Mm-hmm. So you can find like the older like 20s to 50s stuff more frequently.
Interesting.
It's more difficult. It's more like old school, like, you know, meeting people in a bar or knocking on a door, and sometimes you might get a gun in your face, but it's like actually like, you know, it's out there, which is cool.
Yeah, that's wild. I had no idea that this existed.
Yeah. There's a huge foreign market for clothing if you know what to look for and you're really patient about it. Most of my friends aren't all that interested in it because the American domestic market is so good right now. Yeah. But why would you cater to like some guy that changes up what he buys every time? But I'm interested in catering to it a little bit because it's so long standing. Mm-hmm. And there's so much more of like an established culture in like used clothing over in Japan, where it's more like collector centric, not, you know, nothing in the store right now that I have I would really consider to be like collectible, right? But people over there and people in the United States too, it's not just there. Like it's very much a real thing over here too. It's just more emergent.
Yeah.
But there are like menswear collectors that collect, like old leather jackets and old jeans to the point where they like only wear stuff for special occasions or you know what I mean? Like they take really good care of their stuff. They mend it professionally to where you can't see the mend. It's like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We're just like the $14, $18 t-shirt store for like college hipster kids who don't want to like go buy something new.
Yeah.
Which I like that in a college town. I think it works well for like, a college town.
Well, you're very cognizant about who your customer is. You're clearly very in tune with that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the backwards town because like Christmas is kind of slow because like everybody goes home, you know?
Right, yeah.
And then like summers are slow, which usually summers for like clothing are like good. You know, like all the stores up in Portland I know of that do consignment stuff, summers are their big months. And down here we just kind of cruise.
Yeah, you just wait for the students to come.
Yeah, we go to 5 days a week. We list more online. We wholesale more to some people. We hope a few of our Japanese guys come through. But yeah, no, we have a few regulars at this point that supplement income when the shop is slow. The trick is just being in multiple places.
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned military too. Is that something that you have another market and buyer for?
There's a large collector market and there's overlap because a lot of old military clothing is functional and really well made. And a lot of it also has like historical provenance. And a lot of it is also popular in Japan. Oh. So you have like maybe one jacket, right? Well, it could be worth more to a collector because it's named and patched and has provenance than it would be to a Japanese dealer. Or it could be worth more to some guy in LA who wants to wear it on a night out. You know what it is? So there's a little bit more research and like brain work into determining what you do with it.
Yeah.
You know, we have a big group of Vietnam era clothing, and Vietnam, like that whole conflict is really interesting as far as like uniforms and kind of like garment production and things like that goes, because a lot of it was done in the theater, which has always happened. There's always been like theater made camouflage and stuff, but it was more happening over there just because of like the climate. It was like jungle, you know. So like there are photos. If you look it up, like it's like the men in green faces, the men in green face paint or something. It's the first iteration of the Navy SEALs. Okay. So they kind of evolved from the underwater demolition teams, the UDTs that were around in World War II. If anybody's watching this who's a military nerd, I'm probably getting it a little bit wrong. So like, you know,
unfortunately I can't correct you because I'm not a military nerd.
But well, they started the Navy SEALs during either the Korean or the Vietnam War. I can't quite remember, but these dudes were gnarly. They were really, really gnarly. Yeah. And they found that the fatigues that they were issued would basically, for the kind of work they were doing, because they were in the water a lot, they weren't like swimming in their fatigues, but they were going through water. Yeah. They would just decompose and rot off in the jungle. And so they would wear Levi's 501s. Oh, okay. Yeah, and so it's like this photo of like all these dudes with like multiple guns and like these crazy experimental vests with all these pockets and stuff, and they're wearing like blue jeans.
Yeah, like what I'm wearing.
Yeah. No, it's really a trip, and there are like multiple camo patterns and stuff. But we have a grouping of Vietnam stuff. Okay, that's all from the same guy. Yeah, and it's named. I went back to this place like 6 or 7 times over the course of a weekend. And none of the clothing itself is all clearly from one person because the repairs on it are the same and everything. But a lot of it's made over in the theater and uses some harder to find camouflage patterns and stuff like that.
And when you keep saying theater, you mean like
the conflict,
the location of
Yeah. It was like a lot of this guy's stuff was made over in Vietnam.
Yeah, you know, like during the war, in the war.
Yes, he had a few pair of pants made over there. One of the shirts is made over there, and there's a little boonie hat that was made over there as well.
Gotcha.
But it's all from the same guy.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily all named, like he didn't write his name or embroider his name. Came from the same place. It's all the same size. Yeah. All the repairs are uniform. Has his regiment patch, doesn't have his name bar on the jacket. That was very common. When you were done with your gear, you would pop the name bar off. And that's sort of like a stolen valor thing. You don't wear like a fatigue with someone's name bar on it, from what I understand.
Okay.
But yeah, the dilemma with that, we've had it for a while, but it's like, do I keep it as a group? Do I piecemeal it out into separate? Like, is it worth more with the historical context,
Yeah.
or is it worth more because 3 of these pants are really good in like the Japanese market? I don't know. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I've sat down and written numbers out like 4 or 5 times. I have some coat that's like a pre-war meaning like pre-World War II,
Mm.
um, like trench coat that was made by, I can't remember who made it, but it was like a 2-star general coat. But I mean, I've been researching that for like months, just getting in like sparingly, you know.
Yeah.
If I have an hour and a half at night, I'll get on forums and I'll like look stuff up and yeah. I've kind of lost my mind on that one. I'm sort of stumped. But yeah.
The concept of just like how you would price something that's so unique like
Yeah.
that. I mean, all of the clothing really, but especially something like that is like, that's kind of a really interesting concept to me. Cause if you're in like general retail and like you're selling, I don't know, whatever, a hammer,
Hmm.
it's just like, okay, whether it's a local mom and pop place like Robnet's,
Hmm.
or they can compare like the like going price of that hammer
Yeah.
to whatever Lowe's, Home Depot selling it for.
Yeah.
It's kind
Yeah.
of like there's a clear benchmarks and comparatives. Might
Mhm.
even, it's probably the same exact hammer, really.
Yeah.
But with what you do with the clothing and the vintage clothing, there's so much variety in like, and then like there's history within certain items of clothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you even figure out where to start when you're pricing?
I have a friend who owns a record store up in Portland, and one of the things he said to me, it was more expletive ridden, but he basically he was like it's not a museum, you know. I'm interested in selling things because I want to have food at the end of the month. Like that's kind of like how I feel about it.
Yeah.
And then one thing that my parents and some of their like friends who were like more long-term dealers always would say, they're like things are worth what people will pay for them,
Yeah.
you know? And I think it's very like kind of in vogue for people who are getting into like the clothing thing to like really push the envelope and like kind of see how much they can get for something. And
Mm.
then it sits around and it doesn't sell.
Yeah.
Well, what's the point? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm guilty of it too. Everyone's guilty of it, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
But with the more accessible stuff, with stuff that's worth like under 50, $75, we're just trying to move it,
Move
you
it.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like with something like that trench coat, I don't know. If someone asked for a price today, I don't even know if I'd be able to,
Sure.
you know what I mean? Cuz what's the difference between a $500 jacket and a $8,000 jacket? It's less than you would think. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are people that make a living off of knowing more than other people. There are plenty of people in the state or in Washington or in California who basically are on the internet all day waiting for stuff to pop up in someone's Instagram feed, and they send a DM, and because they know more, they might have another buyer or they're willing to hold it for a year.
Yeah.
Like when you get up into stuff that's worth hundreds of dollars, value becomes a really like theoretical thing.
Yeah.
And you also want to like, me personally, I know a lot of people who are pretty like unashamed about like asking just some like asinine price for something.
Mm.
And I would like to be able to know enough to price my things to where it shows that I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like it's like a personal pride thing.
Sure.
Like people will find something, will find like a shirt and they'll be like, "Oh, hearing offers." And it's like, "What? No. Like you can't make the person who's buying it buy it and sell it, you know? Like you have to
Yeah.
like there's some culpability that people should have where like if you have something that's really good, you should be able to price it. And I mean, I've messed up before. Everyone's messed up before. That's how you learn in this, like if I learn about something new, I've been learning about like studio pottery from like we're from the 60s through the like 80s even. A lot of like Oregon stuff, names like that. 50s maybe, I guess. 50s through like the 80s. Because it used to be that like pottery from like the early 1900s through the 30s was really valuable, like American art pottery.
Yeah.
And that market totally fell out. It's not worth that much anymore. There are a few patterns that have kind of like held on,
Huh.
but the emergent stuff is like the more mid-century kind of like styles of glazes, and a lot of it is very like unique one-off fired stuff. I've lost so much money buying dumb pots that I didn't know anything about at garage sales because I thought they were cool. And I'd buy it for like $5-10 and I'd go home and I'd research it and I'd be like, sweet, and I'd smash it in the garbage or like donate it to Goodwill or something.
Yeah.
But I found a couple really nice pieces of pottery in the process. And so like learn about something the way that I like to learn about something is like kind of an academic process, but also really tactile, where like you're handling stuff and you're going into shops and you're handling stuff and you're paying retail for stuff because you like it.
Yeah.
And then if it gets to the point where you're in like a situation where it's in front of you, you know what to grab, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like so much of it when you're on the fly is just quick identification.
Yeah.
Like you pick it up, you're like, this feels like it's good just because it feels nice. And you're like, great, I'll buy it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the more I do it, the more I know. And so the more opportunities you have to get like that one special thing that like, you know, we had a pre-war knit sailor sweater. Like they're called a gob sweater. And gob is like a somewhat, I don't know, it's like kind of like a jokingly derogatory term for like a sailor or something. But they call them gobs because that's what the gobs would wear. But like I recognized it based on how it was knit. It doesn't have a tag. It's just black wool knit together, you know. And so like if you know things like that, you can start maneuvering yourself in ways that are much more interesting than just buying like printed t-shirts and things.
Yeah.
But it's just a lot of low level. I don't count it as labor, but a lot of like weird late nights, like obsessively reading, like, you know, it's
yeah. I mean, labor kind of is. It's time. It's time.
Yeah. Labor is a weird thing when you have like your own thing going. Like my hourly, I don't want to calculate my hourly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like that's not something I'm ever doing. I like going to bed at night and sleeping. You know, like I just wouldn't be able to even.
What you're saying is something I hear a lot, especially talking to people on this podcast, is just like that when you have a form of self-employment, like there's usually a weave in and out of your life. Like, it's just like, it's part of the fabric of your life.
It's something you like. You know, so you're doing it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of, you don't really carve out like, oh, I'm working today. I'm not. I don't know. I get that question a lot from friends. Did you work yesterday? I'm like, yes, but like I'm always working, but I'm also often not. Like there's the separation between, for what I do, of just like, am I doing a paid gig?
Yeah.
Am I, you know, on the clock for someone if I'm freelancing with hours of editing, or am I like doing a project or doing a shoot? Yeah, then like that's, I think, what they're looking for when they ask me the question, did you work yesterday? Is just like, oh yeah, I had a gig. Right. But even those days that I don't, I'm still like working. Right. Because you're just like, you know, you're brewing ideas, you're developing marketing things, you're networking. Right. It's just like it's hard to put labels on those kind of things.
I've talked about this with my friends too. Yeah, like what are you doing currently in like the hobby department? Like what kind of hobbies are you rocking right now? Like outside of your work?
Oh, me personally?
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean that's one of the reasons why I don't do enough work, quote unquote, is I mean my hobbies vary. There's usually consistent ones. If my body's feeling good, as it is today, which I'm very pleased about, I'm playing like soccer pretty routinely, watching a lot of soccer as well.
Good day for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I couldn't be out there today because I'm doing this.
Yeah, sorry.
This is good. No. Don't apologize about that. Yeah, and other outdoor activities, mountain biking.
Okay, cool. Yeah, like
ball,
active stuff.
Yeah, active stuff, hiking, snowboarding in the winter, and all that. There's just hanging out with friends. What does that mean?
I think that's just being a human. I know.
Yeah.
Like it's, you know what I mean? Like it's weird to have to like budget for like social time or, you know, to do like things like that. And so many of like the hobbies that I had before the shop started, it was like, I like going to antique stores. It's like, that's my work now, kind of.
Yeah.
Shoot. Like, how do I like delineate or navigate in between that? And yeah, I was talking about that with my buddy too. And we were talking about like, oh, I want to get into playing music. And I was like, well, you know, you're going to get really into the gear and you're going to be spending money on the gear and trading stuff for the, you know, it's like everything like.
I think that can happen, and it often does, especially to people who are kind of geared like we are.
Yeah.
Because I've had that with, you know, cameras and stuff, like haven't always made money or tried to make money doing photography and video. But even when I wasn't trying to make money, I get into that suck of just like, I like taking photos because I'm like out doing hiking and I'm like, oh, I'll take photos of this cool place I'm in. And then like I get a little bit into the gear side of things, too much so. But sometimes it is hard to separate yourself. And I think knowing that you can like potentially get sucked in, like,
you got to be like mindful of it.
Exactly. But I think for some people, they're able to keep a pretty clear separation. Like I don't have any aspirations of coaching youth soccer or like getting my way into writing articles or becoming a podcaster or blogger about like the professional side of soccer that I consume so much of. There's like a pretty clear delineation there between like
fun.
It's fun. Yeah, that's a fun thing. So for me, I've, got little pockets of things that are fun and then things that kind of have that almost danger of like becoming like skirting that, oh, should I try and make money at this? And how far into do I get?
Yeah. It's the danger of it. And I mean, I think a lot of people go into this kind of stuff like being like, I'm going to make a ton of money.
Yeah.
No, you're not. Like, you know what I mean? Like you might, you probably won't.
Yeah.
Just have fun. But don't try to like make a lot of money. Try to make enough. Like I think that's sort of like what's lost. And like entrepreneur hustle culture is so like prevalent with like the internet right now.
Yeah.
And I guess probably coming out of COVID too, where everyone was like, my hobby, oh, I can make money on this, and they like got like really, and I mean, I'm kind of like born out of that as well. Like I was doing it a little bit more, but it accelerated during COVID for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the amount of like, there's like a certain level of like weird self-advocacy and like borderline pretension with something like I get from like a lot of like people who are like kind of wanting to start out. You know what I mean? Like it's big in clothing to be like, oh, I'm a curator, or and it's like, no, you're not. You know what I mean? Like you color coded everything. I'm not a curator. I'm just like a junk man that happened to like find a building that was for rent. Like I'm like a glorified garbage man. I'm not.
No. You're the VP of sales.
I am the VP of sales. Yeah, no, I like that title.
AKA junk man.
VP. Yeah, like people come in and they're like, I love the curation. It's like that came out of the trash. like I washed it, but that came out of the garbage, dude. Yeah, it's funny. It's silly. It's silly and unserious. I think if you're gonna go into something like this, you need to be like stupid, like not stupid, a little stupid.
You need to know, like you need to be aware and realistic.
Yes.
If you're chasing it just for that, the money, and then B, the whatever, the prestige or ego driven, then that's probably the wrong motivators.
Yeah, I think people like conflate entrepreneurship with traditional intelligence, if that makes sense. Like they put themselves in the position of like owning a business or whatever, and they think that's like we get kids in all the time who are like studying business at like Oregon State. And they're like, what, you own this? How old are you? And like when I started the store, I was like 23. I was like, I'm 23, like I don't know.
Yeah.
And they're like, how did you do that? And it's like, well, we filed with the state for an LLC. Yeah. And we opened a store in Benton County that doesn't require a business license. And we ordered racks from Uline and had backstock. And there's more to it, of course, but it was like, if you want to do it, you can do it. It doesn't really cost that much money, and it might not work out. I didn't know it was going to work out or not,
Sure.
But we opened the store with like a few grand each and no debt. Like you can do it if you want. You're going to work hard. Everybody works hard.
Yeah.
But there's like that thing. It's like a learned, like a lot of the people I meet who own businesses want to present as very like smart or very, and a lot of my friends who have like these really successful shops, it's just chaos.
Yeah.
It's just chaos. They're just like mashing buttons for 12 hours a day, and like through the madness they don't get audited, which is sweet, and they make money. And like that's, you have to be kind of like a mad scientist, and you're going to mess up and you're going to look dumb.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you are far from the first person who's mentioned that, which is a good thing because it means it's true.
Yeah.
Because that's what I hear from pretty much everyone.
Yeah.
So, and I know that's something that it took me a long time to realize. I've got a decade on you as far as age, but I didn't have that realistic perception that you're talking about until like my late 20s, early 30s, where I'm just like, oh yeah, I know, like it is messy. Like that
Yeah.
is the reality for everyone.
It's a mess. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just like before, I'm just like, oh yeah, because you just see the outside of a business or what someone presents.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, they've got it together. It's this package. But no, it's
no,
like
no,
no.
no.
And it's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast is because I like, you know, not exposing sounds like so.
Do the Lint expose.
Yeah. That sounds like the wrong little, clickbaity word, but yeah, just like kind of pulling back that veil, just like, this is what self-employment is it's
We're all just people,
people, and it's kind of messy back here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You pull back the curtain on anything. I mean, that's like my experience too in education. It's just like, it's a lot like running. Like you're just like, what's going on today? Who's showing up? I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna drink a cup of coffee and I'm just gonna do something for 2 hours. And then you think about being in school and you come in and here's your like teacher who like knows all this stuff.
Yeah.
No, you know what I like. I'm like Googling stuff like while I'm teaching, like just to make sure I have it right and I'm not teaching them the wrong thing. And it's a little bit of it, but like same thing at the shop.
Yeah.
Like it's all just maybe this is more reflective of me as a person than like having a business, but
no, I think
it's a little bit of a mess.
I mean, that's I think it's I find a lot of similarities in my life too, because I mean we're like you said, we're people and we can't know everything. So why would we know everything? Because it's impossible. There's too much to know.
You're setting yourself up to get burned if you present in that way.
Yeah, exactly. So just be honest and just be like, yeah, I'm figuring it out.
Yeah, you gotta approach the world like a kid. Like act like everything's new, and then someone might teach you something, and then you know it.
Yeah.
Like the top question I get asked is like, "Where do you get your stuff? Where do you get your stuff?"
Of course, yeah. Because people are interested.
Yeah, no, and they're like, "I want to do this," and it was like, you can, but you're gonna burn $1,000.
It's not literally just going out to like, a wholesale supplier. Like, I mean, well, you've gone into the details of how.
Yeah.
But like, it's not so simple. There's work involved and knowledge.
Yeah, there's some fun long days, Yeah. I like it. I like the people you meet and everything. I wish that we had like a little bit bigger of a space, but it's super manageable. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that something that like you have an idea, aspirations of doing, or are you? Because I know you also separately started teaching a little bit as well, which is a whole separate thing.
To keep it brief about like the teaching, I mean, I live split time, Corvallis in the Portland area, and don't have any time to scale this shop at all. And I don't really want to scale it. You know what I mean? Like this is my like dumb little clothing store. It's got 8 racks in it, and we're playing like weird music, and everything's pretty cheap. So come in, and if something fits you and you want it, buy it. And and I like that ethos around it. I've seen a lot of people get really caught up, and I mean, I'm guilty of it. I've seen a lot of people get really caught up in like money and like growing, or like just obsessively like just checking the square.
Yeah.
Or always like figuring out some angle to make more money, or and it's just like, why? It makes enough. It's not, I don't think the level that I'm doing it at right now is like amenable to like a long-term career.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's amenable to like a really good part-time thing that can like run itself. If we have a cheap space and we have good backstock that also goes to a network of like people that are wholesaling it.
Mm-hmm.
You can have the like little storefront that's cool and that you like, and sort of like, not pride and joy, but just like done the way you want it.
Yeah, some identity there that's tied to you.
Yeah, a little bit of autonomy with, like I've got an actual boss now with my other gigs, so it's like I come back and I do what I want, which is crazy. But it's cool where it's at, and we might eventually, as long as you have the backstock and the inventory, you can take 50 things up and live somewhere and just list them all.
Yeah.
And make money off of that too. Like it's in some ways a very mobile thing. I'm tied to Corvallis. I'm tied to the state of Oregon.
Why is that?
It's because we got the shop here. I know where to get stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's been a process of like 10 years. You know what I mean? Like 20, or maybe more like 7 or 8. Yeah. But like late high school. Yeah. Like starting to go places and figure out where stuff might be and where stuff is. And it changes, but I'm way better at it now.
And you're tapped in now. You got your fingers on the pulse of
we
working.
We know people. We have friends. We've built up good like working relationships with people. Like,
yeah,
it's a decent place to be.
Sure. What do you envision for yourself in the future, near or far, as far as what you might be doing?
Man, I need a master's degree.
Yeah.
I get lucky with jobs, but I am so not super employable right now. I
Mm.
could probably go into like the education sector. I mean, I already am like sort of there. We want to keep the shop open.
Yeah.
I like it. We've worked really hard on it. It would be kind of stupid to just like close it because like we're doing different stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, at this point, we're slowly filing and getting all the tax paperwork situated to maintain an employee. Right? And so with
Yeah.
that, the in-person labor becomes less strenuous. Like
Right.
I just work one day a week on the weekends, and then the rest of the week is sort of like madness, running around doing crazy stuff.
Yeah, but it helps you scale your time a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, if we can get someone in the shop for like 15 an hour, it's worth my time. My time is better spent somewhere else.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at stuff and once a week it yields some $300 to $500 thing, that's more valuable to the business than me assisting in sales.
Yeah, of course.
It's not too difficult to just be like, "What's up? How's it going? Like, you want to try some stuff on? Like, it's a beautiful day outside. The weather's nice." Like that's basically like working in a store and providing customer service. And so like if we can just get someone to do that and I can be like behind the scenes pulling the strings in my spare time
Mhm.
if I have another gig, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's very transitional right now. I'm sort of in the middle of like a lot of weird things and,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Well, I'll have to check back here in
Yeah, yeah.
a couple of years.
I'll land somewhere. I
Yeah.
do need to go to grad school. That master's degree is a nice thing to have.
Yeah.
Get-
Well, it sounds like you've got strong aspirations to go into education.
It's pretty sweet, especially if you like this stuff. You know what I mean? Because it's a teaching. Teaching's really cool. I don't want this to sound like I'm just like, oh yeah, I love money and summers off, but it is money and summers off. Like
Yeah.
you get paid. It's very work intensive. You know what I mean? It's very labor intensive. Like
Yeah.
teaching is pretty. I get paid for 2 contract hours a day. I'm there anywhere from like 3 to 5 a day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but you get paid well for those 2 that you're paid.
Yeah.
And when you get a full-time contract, retirement, benefits,
Mhm.
benefits for your spouse if you have one, benefits for your family if you have one. You get into the PERS system. It's a pretty nice like stabilizing thing,
Yeah.
which means that if you have a nice stabilizing thing, you can get even crazier with the like shop side of stuff.
Yeah. Well, especially if you are living that academic schedule and you
Yeah.
have that
Yeah.
large swaths of time off.
Oh man, 3 months out of the year, I could find, like 5 storage containers full of stuff.
Yeah.
And then that can just ride us out through the year. And I mean, if you get something, if you build something up and you get it to the point where you're not like financially reliant on it,
Yeah.
which was sort of like having those like bar gigs too. Like if I could pay for stuff, I can take less money from the shop and,
Mhm.
like it just sort of like fluctuates in that way as well. You don't want having a business to rule your life in the way to where you're like, I'm going to take $1,000 this month and I'm going to live on nothing. And the shop can buy more t-shirts. You don't want it to be like that.
Right.
But if you have like an established thing with a flexible schedule and large swaths of time off, and you also have something that is growing, you can grow it and you don't have to take money from it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And then it can grow on its own. And then the more money you have in that, the more money you can make on it. Scaling's weird. Scaling's really weird to me. And a lot of the people that scale well are the people that start with a family member who has 40 grand.
Mhm.
I didn't have that, and so it's like you got to do it the tough way on your own, and
Yeah.
But like you're playing with 3-figure things, and then the second year or the first year you play with 4-figure things, and then you bump it up and you start looking at your bank and they're 5-figure things, and
Yeah.
so it's like you're just
Yeah.
everything takes time. I have no patience. It's a bad like personality trait, but like these
Yeah.
things just take time to build, and if you're not taking as much money from it, it accelerates it.
Yeah. Well, we'll look at patience as one of the many things that you're learning on your journey.
Oh, I'm doing my best. It's a pretty poor grade in patience, but
Yeah, well, you'll improve on that.
good grade in coffee and running around the state. So yeah,
Yeah, we each got our own traits.
yeah.
So you kind of touched on this, but just open it up for maybe a recap, or if
Yeah.
you have anything else, any advice you have for people who are looking for self-employment.
Don't do it. No.
Yeah.
I think that I was really. It was something that happened at the shop I worked in a lot, where things would never necessarily go to plan.
Mm.
Right. I don't think if you open your own thing, it will in the first. And I've only been doing this full time for like I've been doing it off and on since like high school, but I've only been doing this full time for like 3 years, 3.5 years. I'm trying to think how long I've been out of my undergrad.
A few years.
Yeah, it's still relatively novel in the scheme of people who make careers out of this.
Yeah.
Or people, it's not. It's a recent thing in my life. Nothing is ever going to go the way you want it to. And you are going to wake up every day and there's going to be more on your plate than you can possibly do. And the sooner you get over that and you realize that, like, I'm just going to do what I can today. You know what I mean? Like, it's solid effort, 8-hour effort. And a lot of it's going to get kind of messed up. And I'm just going to do it tomorrow too. Like, the more you just get into that habit of like, nothing's going to really go the way I want it to go. And if I do good work, it's not going to be enough work for how I want it to go. You know what I mean? It's non-traditional stuff is weird. It was a weird thing in my family because, like, yeah, I have an undergrad degree. Like, I could go and just be a teacher and it would be fine. And I would probably make more money than I make now. And, it's like, it's very much like in the back of my mind.
Sure.
But it got to the point where I was like, man, I should probably just give this the college try for at least a few years and see what happens. Because you don't know until you do it. Right. I don't know, everyone should be self-employed. Everyone should work in the service industry. Everybody should work in like a classroom. And there was one more. Service. I can't quite remember, but it's fine. You see people who haven't worked in those settings or who haven't, and they're just so like inept, like in certain like social settings, or they can't deal with people. And like, what's the point if you don't have like interpersonal skills? You know what I mean? I'm much more well-rounded because I was super like quiet and like kind of awkward. And I still am. I mean, I'm like loud about how awkward I am. The awkwardness doesn't change. But like,
I don't think you're awkward, but okay.
I'm better at talking with people now because through like late COVID. Oh, blue collar job. Everyone should have. Okay, wait. Sorry, I keep upping it.
It's all good.
Blue collar, service industry, retail, self-employment, classroom. I think
sample that palette.
Yeah, when you're young.
Yeah.
Start it when you're like 16 and try to finish it in a decade. And you're going to hop around a lot and it's going to be a lot of hard work, but it makes you really well adjusted to things,
Yeah.
And it'll make you realize you learn a lot about backgrounds. You learn a lot about people. You learn a lot about like handling people and everything. Like, I think I am as decent socially as I am now because hopping out of COVID, it was just like working retail, self-employment, working in bars, customer service stuff, and being bad at it. It was sweet that I was so bad at that because like, oh man, just like how you have to handle like messing up someone's bill. And I mean, I did that a lot. I would like mess up someone's bill and they would be so mad.
Yeah.
And you have to just like talk them off a cliff, or you get like a drunk guy and they're like angry and you have to talk them off a cliff, or you're in like a classroom and like you have to talk with someone about like why they smell like drugs. Like these are all like really cool, important conversations that like everyone should be able to handle because it would make you a more sympathetic. I can't remember the difference.
Yeah.
That's not good because I have an English degree, but it shows how much I've been using it. But yeah, I think, if you want to work self-employment, be prepared to be a little overworked and a little disappointed. And then when you're around the corner, you'll be like really satisfied with it. It's a weird thing where you have to like, it's a strange introspective process.
Well, I feel like you're setting yourself, what you're talking about is running this gauntlet, this like, it's kind of like this, it's not going to be fun necessarily in the moment, but it's like you come out the other side and like you said, you're more well-rounded and you'll appreciate it. It's just like, those things that I'm sure everyone has a moment where they're like, I don't know why I hated what my parent made me go through. Like for me, I was like, had piano lessons, mandatory piano lessons when I was.
I wish I had stuck with piano.
That's what I'm getting at. Exactly. It was like, I don't know how old I was. There was like a 2-year period where me and my brother had to take piano and we did. But as soon as my parents like said like, okay, you don't have to do it anymore, I was out. My brother kept up for a little bit longer. And now I'm just like, man, I didn't appreciate it at the time, but I do now. And I wish I'd stuck with it more.
Yeah.
But yeah, it goes hand in hand with what you're saying about it. It'll make you better as a person. More in the end.
Yeah. And, if you're going to do it, give yourself some room. I gave myself like no room and was probably like way too critical on how I was doing and what I was, you know what I mean?
Well, when you say room, do you mean like
for errors?
Grace?
Yeah.
Providing yourself with grace to mess up.
It was so stressful opening one because it was like, oh my God, like this is what I'm doing. You know what I mean? And everybody in my family, like my parents have done something similar, but they eventually found traditional careers. And like the setting that I was raised in, it was like everyone goes to high school and then they go to a 4-year college and then they get a job and they work in an office until they're old and they get a retirement account and they retire in a log. It was like a very
formulaic,
like, straight up suburban kind of like way of doing things, which makes plenty of people happy. But if you grow up around nothing but that and then go into something that's non-traditional, there's a lot of like, am I messing up? Am I messing up? Is this the wrong decision? Oh, well, and I mean, like, years when I started this, I was 23, 22, something like that. Every year is kind of important when you're, that's a big chunk of time when you're that young.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm 25 now. A year is still like a long time.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, I've invested 3 years of my life into this. It's really not that. It's pretty inconsequential.
It'll be a drop in the bucket.
Yeah. But like, it feels like just like
in the moment,
so much time in the moment, And so it's like, give yourself room to like, you're going to mess up. It was so freeing. The first day a shop made $0 in a day. It was sweet. I looked at the square. I was like, this sucks. And I was like, okay, cool. Guess I'm going to go get dinner. Like, what can you do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it happens,
Yeah. I can relate strongly to that. Maybe not the looking at my square, but as far as like look at my to-do list on a day that I'm not working, quote unquote, as my friends would look at it.
I don't even keep a to-do list. I can't.
Dude,
I would get so overwhelmed.
I've kept this like quasi to-do list journal. It's more of a to-do list than a journal, but it's basically a document of like what I'm doing every day. It's digital and what I plan to do each day. So that's why it's kind of a to-do list. And I've done that consistently without really missing a day for probably like almost 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's kind of part of my regimen. And but it's both good because it keeps me on task, and it cuts the other way too, because there's plenty of days where I look at it, I'm just like, I got to nothing today. I got to one thing on that list.
Yeah.
And then, and then I go through that little process of like beating myself up a little bit about it. But I think that's been good, because as more years have gone by with me using this like little to-do list thing, I've learned more and more that it's like, it's okay if I like don't hit all the things on the list, because it's happened so many times.
Yeah.
That I don't hit them all. And now I've just learned, kind of like what you're just talking about, like, oh, the shop made $0. Oh, well, time for dinner.
Yeah.
I've had that moment so many times, and the more you have that moment, the more that you just like soak it in as like, it's okay. And like, my world didn't implode. I still had a house over my...
You're still alive?
Yeah, it was still had a place to live, still had food, still had friends. And it's like, yeah, I think you need to like go through those moments, whether they look like mine or yours, to like realize it's okay and build a little bit of resilience.
A healthy amount of ego death.
Yeah.
It makes you a nicer guy in the long run, I think. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's cool. Like, and it takes away like the people I'm like close with who have self-employment stuff, same exact stories. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are people I know who have like shops and stuff who would probably never admit it, that it was like that or whatever. But the people I know who are like doing well and like super functional, like functionality is a really important thing too within this whole like field of like, or like world of, I don't know, sphere of self-employment.
Sure.
It's also bad to work too much,
Mm-hmm.
It's because, if you're working, I had a crazy work schedule the past 2 months, and it gets to a point where like you're looking at stuff and you're all like overwhelmed and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like something's going to fall to the wayside.
Yeah.
Something is going to have to be pushed aside, whether it's family stuff, interpersonal stuff, health stuff, work stuff. Like there's a plethora of things on the table that make you well-rounded and functional. And if you really let this kind of a thing or this style of employment get to you, something caves. And you can decide what that's going to be. You can make the decision, but you're going to be unhealthy, or you're going to like ignore your family, and then, like it's just like something along the way has to cave in, or your quality of work's going to go down.
Yeah.
What's better, 12 hours of work or 4 hours of really good work? I don't know. I really don't know. I've done both, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, finding that balance.
Yeah.
Let's just wrap up here. So how can people find you, get in touch with you, whether it's business or whatever you want to share?
I have an Instagram account for the shop. It's just the word Lint. It's pretty much the only way. The shop's on Google. 202 Southwest 5th Street, Corvallis, Oregon, 97333. If you call the number on Google, that's just Charlie's phone. He'll probably answer. He might not. We're open 7 days a week. It's probably not me in there at this point. I'm there on the weekends. Yeah. That's kind of it.
Well, Jake, this has been a fun conversation. Thanks for having it with me.
Yeah, it's been super fun.
Yeah. And there you have it. If you want to hear more conversations with people like Jake, or people who aren't Jake, and other interesting conversations, then please subscribe or follow the podcast. Until then, this has been The Bossless Path. Catch you next time.